The film opens in the desolate western landscape, where Rodney has lured a blonde girl by pretending to be a photographer. He gets her to open up about how she has no one to support her in the real world, as she's estranged from her family and her boyfriend. He determines that she is a suitable candidate for his nefarious plan. Not only does he unalive her by strangulation, he resuscitates her only to unalive her once again. The scene now cuts to the second timeline, which revolves around an acting student named Cheryl Bradshaw. She gets rejected by two middle-aged casting directors who indirectly shame her for her age. After making various snide remarks, they eventually let her go because she is not open to doing scenes without clothes. When she drives back to her apartment, her neighbor Terry stops her to ask about the audition. He is also struggling between jobs, so he helps Cheryl practice. He follows her to her apartment, where her agent Lisa calls her to let her know that she has booked Cheryl for a famous dating show. Later at the bar with Terry, she discusses if the show is beneath her standards. He suggests going through with it, even though it's derogatory to women, because it will be good exposure for her. While praising her beauty, Terry tries to push back a strand of hair from her face, but she gets startled and acts all jumpy. She immediately feels sorry for this and apologizes, but things get awkwardly silent. She ends up sleeping with him out of pity. In the third and most recent timeline, we meet Rodney's last victim, Amy, who's a disabled homeless girl. A security officer wakes her up on a bench and tells her to run off. She ends up in a laundry shop where she gets a handful of free chocolates and sits on the ground to munch on them. A worker scolds her for being in the way, so she plans to steal some coins from one of the machines and run away. Unfortunately, the coins fall on the ground, which makes it impossible for her to pick the pennies as one of her hands doesn't have fingers. The shopkeeper also comes after her, but she outruns him and sits under a random staircase. There, she's discovered by Rodney, who starts taking pictures of her without her permission. She finds him invasive at first, but when he compares her to random Hollywood actresses, she gets flattered. He politely asks her to be his subject for a photography contest that he is taking part in. Since she's desperate and has nowhere else to go, she says yes to him and gets into his car. The scene transitions back to Cheryl, who reaches the set late. Lisa shows her in from the back exit and takes her straight to the makeup room. Cheryl finds it empowering to be in the company of the makeup artists, since they seem to be more intelligent than the dumb men who appear on the show. There shows up the show's host, Ed Burke, with his comically huge sideburns. The phony Ed pretends to be nice to Cheryl, but deep down he feels threatened by her presence. He specifically asks her to act dumb and admits that the boys don't like a smart woman. He also finds her hair flat and makes the hairstylist give her a whole new look. In the parking lot, families are starting to gather so they can sit in the studio as the live audience. Among these people, we see Laura and her man-child of a boyfriend who brought his parents with him. Cheryl's hair is styled like the First Lady of America, and she is sent to the stage with her cue cards. She gets stage fright due to the giant spotlight that nearly blinds her. The scene now cuts to another timeline, in which another one of Rodney's victims happens to be Charlie. She has just moved into her new apartment and is painting the walls. She spills paint on herself during a call, so she takes a shower immediately. Meanwhile, the moving people show up and wait for her. When she finally attends to them 10 minutes later, they drop her furniture outside her apartment building and leave. Hopeless of moving the furniture herself, Charlie spots Rodney on the streets and asks him for a helping hand. He appears to be humble and helps her move all her furniture. She treats him to a beer when they're all done. He acts all charming and makes her feel like there's a spark between them. Eventually, she takes his beer bottle and starts cleaning up the space to hint that this is his cue to leave. Instead, we see from the glass rooftop that he is attacking her relentlessly. He unalives her with a scarf and photographs her to add a new trophy to his collection. Back on the game show, it makes it clear for Cheryl that she will be asking questions from the three bachelors, who would remain hidden from her, and so will their private information. At first, Cheryl plays dumb just to fit in and continues to laugh at Ed's inappropriate jokes. She asks the questions that are already given to her on the cue cards. The first bachelor happens to be a dimwit, while the second one is overconfident and cocky. The third bachelor happens to be none other than Rodney, who is really good at acting like a charming gentleman. The camera pans to Laura sitting in the audience. She recognizes Rodney from a bonfire in the past and gets incredibly frightened. While Cheryl continues to question the bachelors according to the script, Laura walks out of there. On her way out, her foot gets caught up in a cable, which topples one of the monitors. Due to this, the game show takes a quick break. While Laura locks herself up in her car, we see another flashback from Rodney's past. He locks eyes on a seemingly submissive intern at his workplace and convinces him for a private photography session at a location of his choice. Rodney's boss shows up, claiming that cops have arrived for an interrogation. He lies to his colleagues, claiming that the cops came in for a follow-up on the items he reported missing. When he comes out of the interrogation, he finds that everyone was talking behind his back. He breaks into tears and rushes to the bathroom to wash his face. There, he realizes that someone is standing next to the urinals. It turns out to be the intern he had eyed earlier. The intern nervously lies about being busy at work and cancels the private photo shoot that he had agreed to. Back in Cheryl's timeline, Laura recalls the day her friend's corpse was discovered in her room. On the game show set, the makeup artists touch up Cheryl's makeup. She nervously asks them if she's doing well. Those women encourage her to be herself and not care about how Ed wants her to act. This motivates Cheryl, who now starts writing her own questions on the cue cards. Meanwhile, the second bachelor interacts with Rodney and tries to make small talk about Cheryl's appearance. Rodney passes an evil smirk and tells him not to worry, hinting at the fact that Rodney is sure Cheryl will pick him over the other two bachelors. Outside, Laura's boyfriend comes to see her in the car. She confesses to him that Rodney is the man who unalived her friend and got away with his heinous crime. He tries to convince her that she must be mistaken because a serial unaliver would never show up on a live game show like that. Laura kicks him out of her car and walks away. When the game show comes back on air, Cheryl shows her true self by asking tricky questions from the bachelors, which makes them feel emasculated and dumb. Ed intervenes, but she mocks him too. The first bachelor straight up fails to answer her question. The second bachelor tries to be cocky again, but Rodney displays his wit and cleverly shuts him up. This impresses Cheryl a great deal, and she begins to think Rodney might actually be someone intelligent. Ed finally takes a break and cusses at Cheryl when he takes a stroll with Lisa. He wants her out right after the game. Behind the scenes, Laura meets the security officer and tells him about Rodney being a dangerous criminal. He assures her that he has called the producer and takes her to the waiting area, where she waits to address the issue to the producers. During the break, Cheryl asks the makeup artist how she did. They claim that it doesn't matter as long as the underlying question remains the same. Which one of the bachelors will hurt her the most? Bachelor number 2 comes to pick a bone with Rodney, who doesn't feel threatened and asks him to exchange contacts so they can fight later. This was his clever way of getting the man's address. Rodney hands him a picture of one of his victims as a threat. The deeply disturbing photo renders him speechless, but Rodney lies about the photo being edited and eats it right away. While Laura waits, the bachelors are introduced to Cheryl. The second one meets her cheek to cheek, so he can warn her about Rodney. She's clever, so she remains sharp. Rodney hugs her unlike the others and holds her waist while Ed announces their trip to California, which will be sponsored by the show. On the other hand, Laura waits for hours just to find out from the janitor that she was tricked by the security guard. She simply leaves the set feeling disappointed. While Cheryl walks out into the parking lot, Rodney is already waiting for her. Without hesitation, he begins working his charm on Cheryl and asks her out to dinner. The scene briefly shifts to Amy's timeline. We see Rodney driving her to the deserted hills like his previous victims. He finds out everything about her personal life and contemplates how she is the perfect target. Amy sees his portfolio, which contains the shy intern's photo, indicating that Rodney has already unalived her by now. When Rodney takes her up the hill, he asks her to pose by looking up in the air. This is where he unfortunately attacks her also. Back in Cheryl's timeline, she talks about her favorite books, and Rodney appears to know a great deal about classic literature. She pretends to be impressed, which gives Rodney the impression that he has enamored her. He asks the waitress for another drink, but Cheryl secretly signals at the waitress not to bring it out yet. The waitress helps her out by deciding to close down the place. Rodney accompanies her to her car in the studio's parking lot. He asks Cheryl for a number, during which he pushes her hair back in such a gentle manner that she doesn't even flinch. When they get to the parking lot, Rodney insists that she also speaks the number she wrote down. This gives it away that she wrote down a wrong number. She confesses the truth about never wanting to see him again. When she turns around, Rodney murmurs to himself about smashing her head. Cheryl is able to hear this, and she visibly starts to panic. She starts walking faster towards her car, but Rodney catches up and blocks her way. Luckily, some crew members walk out of the studio, due to which Rodney leaves, and she gets to return home safely. Meanwhile, Laura visits the police station and demands to reopen her friend's case, but they don't even remember filing her report when she first reported the crime. This maddens her and causes her to cuss at them on her way out. She gives up on the thought that Rodney will ever be caught. Cheryl prepares to move out and decides to leave acting forever, even though Lisa tries to convince her otherwise on the phone. She comes across Terry in the hallway, but doesn't catch up with him after their awkward, intimate encounter. In Amy's timeline, she wakes up to find her pants pulled down and her face badly bruised. Rodney is witnessed crying with his head shoved in the sand next to her. Amy turns out to be a clever one since she's been on the streets for a while. She pretends to soften up to Rodney and politely requests to be taken back to the car. Rodney wipes his tears and frees her wrists. He hits the road with Amy, during which he stops at a gas station to use the bathroom. He begins to trust Amy, so leaves her alone in the car. When he returns, he finds the car empty. Soon, the cops arrive and arrest him, revealing that Amy managed to call them from a nearby diner. As a monster gets what he deserves, the film comes to an end. To watch more awesome and thought-provoking movie recaps, please subscribe to Film Guy Recaps. Don't forget to like this video and tell us in the comments which movie you want to see next. Goodbye for now.